The big shocker, the potential new US Treasury Secretary, is now talking about using the US reserve assets to pay off the debt. And to be honest, the only reserve asset that can make this happen is Bitcoin. All the other reserve assets can never pay off the US debt. Bitcoin is the sole reserve asset for US debt. Others can't. Thus, a US Bitcoin reserve is hinted, possibly confirmed by the new Treasury Secretary. That's why we have an indirect hint that a US Bitcoin reserve has to be on the way. This is confirmed by the potential new US Treasury Secretary. Plus, there's a leak from the New York Post suggesting that crypto czar David Sachs is making a big push for a Bitcoin reserve. Confirmed here by the potential new US Treasury Secretary. Also, there's a leak from the New York Post saying that crypto czar David Sachs is making a big push for a Bitcoin reserve. Or rather, he's already discussed and thought about it and is possibly preparing for it. That's pretty intense. We also have a highly explosive statement from the Bitcoin president in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, who was saying the unthinkable here. He's talking about his Bitcoin critics who accused him, and they keep asking why he's buying Bitcoin. And the same critics from the bear market, why is he buying Bitcoin here? And the same critics from the bear market are now dictating his Bitcoin spending, what he should spend his Bitcoin profits on. He just delivered a fiery speech. It's really unbelievably intense that we're also going to take a look at. But first, we need to take a look here in the U.S. Here, Scott Bessent, the potential new US Treasury Secretary, is talking about. Basically, asset devices, that's what we're getting into here. That you can also use reserve assets here to basically pay off debts. And I just mentioned it in the intro, hey folks, if you have different reserve assets here in the U.S., like gold or US Treasury bonds, I mean, it's completely unrealistic. Are we really talking about paying off US national debt with gold or US Treasury bonds? Or even foreign government bonds or something like that at some point? What else you might have in your asset portfolio? That means the national debt in the US is rising a lot faster than the price of gold. You can never really balance the national debt by buying gold, but with Bitcoin, that could be possible. And going all in on gold or something like that, you can never really offset the national debt here. But with Bitcoin, that could definitely be possible. Michael Saylor has already presented some concepts on how this is possible. Also Cynthia Loomis and others, how this is possible. Also Cynthia Loomis and others. But now listen to this, what Scott Bessent has to say. And then let's take a look. Following that, let's delve into what this signifies for Bitcoin. This development is crucial as it indirectly confirms a strategic approach towards maintaining a Bitcoin reserve. By understanding this, we can see how it aligns with broader financial strategies and the potential implications for future Bitcoin investments.
The asset side of the U.S. balance sheet is in your office in favor of a fund, whether it's a sovereign wealth fund or something like you discussed. So that is very much in the mix. I can't wait to get back to you on that. President Trump hasn't taken office yet. If confirmed, this is something that I think could be really exciting because we always look at the debt of the United States and we have fantastic assets that could be earning, leveraged, or used for multiple ways to make money.
So in the end, he says, here, the US has wonderful assets. And as I mentioned, those are government bonds. That's gold. I don't know what else is included in that. Different things, you know. There's cheese too. So the US also has a cheese reserve, a strategic cheese reserve. But he probably didn't mean that here. He probably meant the more liquid assets. For sure, he's still talking about leverage, that you could leverage the whole thing. And when he talks about leverage, he probably means that you buy these assets with borrowed capital. So you basically print your own money and buy with it. Gold, you print your own money, buys government bonds with it. You print your own money and buy from me. David Cheese. So like I said, the cheese, that's just a joke. But you could also print your own money and apply this leverage strategy to Bitcoin, because now we really need to put 2 and 2 together. With government bonds, it doesn't make sense to use a leverage strategy. We can still discuss gold, if it does. It might make sense under certain circumstances, but really it doesn't make sense because the gains are just way too low, and then you have the interest costs to deal with. But the only thing that would make sense here, even from a game theory perspective, is basically just printing money. New money is created to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoiners criticize money printing yet use it. Buying Bitcoin. I mean, that's always a, let's say, critical question because we Bitcoiners always criticize money printing. But then when we buy Bitcoin with that printed money, suddenly we think it's okay. So that also needs to be looked at critically. But in any case, this would be the one. The only thing that makes sense here, in my opinion. But feel free to let me know in the comments below if you see it differently. And in my opinion, this is already an indirect confirmation of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. That doesn't mean that on day one, like right on the first day, the strategic Bitcoin reserve will be established. But it definitely means that Scott Bessent has already thought about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. They're probably already talking about it behind the scenes. It's all being planned. And then the strategic Bitcoin reserve could not only be built up by simply converting the confiscated coins into the stockpile, rather by buying Bitcoin on leverage. So you take on debt, or you just print your own money and buy with that, Bitcoin. And that's basically what Naval said back in 2013. The first state that prints its own money and uses it to buy Bitcoin will massively benefit. They'll probably benefit a lot. Whoever buys Bitcoin will massively benefit. They'll probably benefit, like, massively. I'll just say, shoot this over to the other folks. And the USA has the biggest currency monopoly. That means the USA can print the most money without facing major consequences for it. And they can basically stock up on Bitcoin massively without creating big problems here. Creating big problems. Massively stock up on Bitcoin. And then you just wait around for like 10 years. Can pay off the debts again. I mean, that's still a very... You still have to mention the construct. Because the debt in the USA is rising so rapidly, you really have to take that in. That's now at 36 trillion if it hasn't already hit 37 trillion. And to pay off that debt again, you really have to go big, buy Bitcoin holdings. So you'd probably need to buy at least like a minimum of 2 million Bitcoin. You'd really have to hold on to them for over 30, 40 years. But realistically, it would probably be better to buy 4 million Bitcoin, maybe even 5 million Bitcoin. And then, of course, you wouldn't have to hold onto the Bitcoin for that long anymore. But the question is, can you even accumulate 4 million Bitcoin here? 5 million Bitcoin? I mean, just think about it. If the USA were to buy 4 million Bitcoin, they would drive the Bitcoin price up so massively. It would drive it up so enormously. You can hardly imagine that. So right now, the first purchases are still relatively cheap. But the more FOMO kicks in, and if they ever make that official, and at some point, when you buy 4 million Bitcoin, you can't keep all of that a secret. At some point, this is going to get leaked. It's going to become public. Then the Bitcoin price is going to skyrocket, and then the USA has to. Buying Bitcoin at a price of $1, $2, $3 million. Then I want to see how the USA is going to get to a really significant amount of Bitcoin. So like somehow more than 3 or 4 million Bitcoin or something. And there are also the calculations from Michael Saylor. If you really want to pay off the debts completely, I think there was something like 4 million Bitcoin on the table. JFK called for that too. You should buy 4 million Bitcoin here. So it's really crazy. And we have the indirect confirmation here. But hey, the potential new Treasury Secretary is saying something very important about CBDCs.
I don't see any reason for CBDCs that the USA should have a central bank.
So that's also super bullish. He says there's no reason for the central bank here or for the USA to issue CBDCs, because in the end, it's a control tool, a surveillance tool that doesn't fit with the Bitcoin approach. You can't push CBDCs on one hand. On the other hand, push Bitcoin. That's also what I criticize about the FDP. On one hand, they're all about Bitcoin, a freedom tool, buying it to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. On the other hand, they're pushing the digital euro, a surveillance tool to restrict your freedom. On the other hand, we're pushing the digital euro. The digital euro is a surveillance tool. The digital euro is a tool to restrict your freedom. Bitcoin is a tool to expand your freedom. Choose freedom or total surveillance. Either you go for freedom here or you go for total surveillance. But mixing both together somehow just doesn't work for me. But no matter what, that just doesn't sit right with me. But no matter what, here, the FDP is doing. We now have 2 more massive pieces of the puzzle coming together here in the U.S. First of all, it's like an indirect confirmation of a Bitcoin reserve through that statement, where the finance minister wants to pay off the debt with assets. And secondly, that he's basically standing against CBDCs. That means people who are against CBDCs. They're also making indirect a statement for Bitcoin. So if you're against CBDCs, you're actually on the other side for Bitcoin. Not in every case, but there is definitely a certain connection. And then there's actually a massive leak here, specifically in the New York Times. This is basically about David Sachs, the crypto czar here in the U.S. And he seems to be dealing with a Bitcoin reserve strategy here. This isn't just about a Bitcoin reserve. It's also about an executive order. That also means, in a specific excerpt, it's about a possible executive order that covers several areas of crypto policy. 3 people familiar with the matter said, the Bitcoin holdings, as part of these discussions, 2 of those people confirm. So it's basically about the executive orders, and several areas are supposed to be covered here. So that could be regulation, for example. That could be, for example, buying Bitcoin. Then it could be something else. Definitely several things. And that's basically it. Something similar to what was already in the Washington Post a little while ago, where it was also leaked that there might be an executive order on the very first day. So the suspicion is really starting to solidify now. Yeah, and now there's been another one. A shocking statement from El Salvador by Bitcoin President Nayib Bukele that really leaves you speechless. Listen up, and then I'll give you an assessment. Just for context, this was about how Bukele was always being criticized, buying Bitcoin in a bear market. Now, of course, Bitcoin is in massive profit here. And now listen to what she has to say about it. And especially, it's about the criticism here.
But if you didn't believe in these profits from Bitcoin, now you're the ones deciding how the profits from Bitcoin are used. The opposition, but they were against the Bitcoin law. They were against it, we buy Bitcoin. They were against it, we holding on to Bitcoin when the price dropped. They were against us buying more when the price dropped. And now that we've made money, exactly because we did the opposite of what you said, what they said. Now you're the one saying where to invest. The profits from Bitcoin should be invested in this. The profits from Bitcoin should be invested in this. But if you didn't even believe that Bitcoin really exists, and then they didn't believe that Bitcoin would generate profits, and then they got angry when we bought more, and when the price dropped, they said we should sell and not wait for it to go back up, and we definitely shouldn't buy more, that it goes back up again, and we definitely shouldn't buy more when it had dropped. It has gone up. Now we have 300 million. Now they're not telling people that they're sorry anymore, that you said they would take the dollars away from you. It was a lie. They're not telling people sorry, because they said that the government would lose money and that they would steal the people's money and lose it. In the Bitcoin casino, as they said, they don't say sorry, they just change. Don't. I believe the government should invest the profits from Bitcoin into things like that. So they're always changing the attack strategy. The same thing will happen with mining. Now they say that mining will pollute the rivers. If we clean the rivers, they'll come up with something else. Clean the rivers that they polluted. Then they'll come up with something else. Instead of spending it on that, it's better to go for the other option. The profits from mining should be used for things like that. And they will start changing the attack strategy, because they can't go out anymore and tell the public. Sorry, we lied. Mining didn't cause the pollution. What we said, that it would pollute. And they've actually implemented so many environmentally friendly offset measures that there's a positive outcome. Not just economically, but a positive outcome for the environment and the quality of life for people. The air quality, the water quality, the quality, and the size of our fauna and flora.
So what Nayib Bukele is saying here is basically for every Bitcoin investor, for anyone who's into Bitcoin hotels. Very, very relevant. You shouldn't let any birds here drive you crazy. They're saying here, sell Bitcoin, or those who are ultimately making excuses not to buy Bitcoin. They say it's too speculative, it's too speculative. And that's not just the case with Bukele. You can definitely confirm it from your friend circle or something. For example, if you say here that you're buying Bitcoin, then you're just here, the crazy one. Then it's like, yeah, hey, what are you buying here for Bitcoin? That has changed a bit now. But back then, it was always like this. If you said, yeah, I'm doing something with Bitcoin, then you were the criminal, then you were the crazy one. And then, basically, when Bitcoin has made profits, and I actually know this from discussions with some people, then you say, for example, wow, hey, I've been in Bitcoin for this long. And then people say, yeah, so now you've made massive profits. But it's still a Ponzi scheme, so you gotta sell now. You've made massive profits now. That's still just for criminals, you've made massive profits here. But it still has no value. It's still completely useless. And I would sell all my Bitcoin right now. Sell all your Bitcoin now. So basically, you're advised against buying Bitcoin when the Bitcoin price is low. And then you're basically advised again to sell Bitcoin here when the Bitcoin price is high. And yeah, basically you can do that. But in hindsight, it always turned out that if you did that and followed those tips, Bitcoin just kept going. That if you did that and followed those tips, Bitcoin just kept going up. It just kept going up. So it feels like this now. 100,000 US dollars, Bitcoin is kind of peaking right now. But if you look 5 years into the future, you'll see, oh, maybe Bitcoin is at 500,000, 2 million, 3 million, whatever. I don't know, but probably higher than it is now. And then you see it looks really dumb here again. And that's basically what you can take away from Nayib Bukele. It looks really dumb. And that's basically what you can take away from Nayib Bukele and what he does really well here and understands really well. That as a nation, you buy Bitcoin and hold on to it. And not just trading Bitcoin back and forth after a year or something, but being really clear about it here. Bitcoin buy and hold, just hang in there, keep pushing through. And if you want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link down below for you. 21 Bitcoin. The easiest way to buy Bitcoin here in Europe. You You can get it with the code Bitcoin, up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. I'm signing off here. Syria, in Paraguay. See you later. See you later. Peace out.